There are many myths about consulting. One example of things I frequently hear is that often in consulting projects, the result is already decided at the beginning of the project, meaning that consultants just write down the things that the management of the client is warning them to write down anyway. Is all of this true? These are the things that I'm going to discuss in this video. Today I'm reviewing the 3 most common myths that I've frequently heard about consulting. So welcome to another video here on my channel Firm Learning. Today it's quite warm here in Munich, so I'm not drinking a coffee but just the water. Hope that's fine for you as well. As you know, my name is Heinrich and on my channel I want to help you to become successful in the first years of your career. But now, without further ado, let's jump into the 3 myths and let's have a look whether these are actually true or not. So let's start with myth number 1 about consulting. And this is likely the thing that I hear most frequently when people talk badly about consultants. And this is that consultants just write down what other people on the client side tell them to write down anyway. So pretty much implying that the results of the project are already clear, are already defined from the beginning of the project, and consultants are just there to make it look good, just to provide a justification for maybe some harsh measures that the management wants to take anyway. And what these people mean is that sometimes there is senior management maybe of a client. This senior management wants to do some harsh measures with the organization. Often this will be related to cost cutting, maybe even deciding to let go of employees, of people in the organization. And they don't want to do that on themselves. They just ask consultants to come in and just to do a project, to investigate these things, and then in the end just to write down what they wanted to do in the first place. So what is my view on that? And in general, personally, I consider this perspective to be flawed. I never experienced a situation where at the beginning of a project it was clear what the result was supposed to be. I never was in a meeting with a partner or any other senior personnel of a consulting firm telling the team, explaining to the team that this is now the task, this is what we need to write on a piece of paper, this is what the client wants. Of course, that being said, sometimes you find yourself in a situation where the client already has a couple of hypotheses that the client shares with you. So for instance, yes, it might be that the client is looking into cost-cutting measures and is asking you as a consultant to evaluate these cost-cutting measures. And then of course, depending on the agreed scope, the result of that might be that then you as a consultant also propose things. But in my perspective, this is something very different than just writing down what the client tells you in the beginning. Of course, you're going to pick up some ideas that the client has. Of course, you will evaluate them, potentially also incorporate them in your final suggestion. Though what is important to understand is that if a consulting firm delivers a recommendation to the client, and this is of course especially true for MBB consulting firms like McKinsey, BCG or Bain, the reputation of your firm will be very much attached to the quality of these recommendations. And just as an example, I in the past worked for a client for a firm, and several years ago they apparently did a project with Boston Consulting Group, with BCG. And BCG developed a strategy for this client. And this document was still being circulated through the organization, so this BCG strategy document, and everyone just called the document, the BCG document, the BCG strategy. So clearly your name, your reputation is often very directly tied to the results of your work. And clearly big consulting firms just would not be able to justify to themselves just to potentially damage their reputation, do things, write things down that they do not believe are true, that they do not believe are a recommendation only because any client is asking them to do that. This is just not how it works. Let's talk about the second consulting myth, and this is that consulting is nothing else than glorified temp work. This would mean that as a consultant, you are not really developing new concepts and strategies as an independent party, but you are in the end nothing else than just an extension of the workforce for the employer, for your client. So maybe if a client needs some extra capacity, some extra things that need to get done, but the client does not have enough capacity to get this done in-house, this will be then the scenario where the client is asking for consultants just to take them on as temporary workers to do the things that they cannot currently do in their home organization. And my perspective on this is that while there might be some truth to that, and let me come to that in a moment what that would be, I would argue that this is largely completely exaggerated and not really the case. As a consultant, and now I'm especially talking about MBB consulting firms, so McKinsey, BCG and Bain, you pride yourself of delivering an independent opinion, of delivering your analysis, your view on a perspective that you bring to the client. Indeed, in a normal consulting setup, you are not directly reporting to the client in the sense that the client will tell you what you have to do. Of course, the client will want to review your work, will discuss this work with you, but usually this will not take the form of the client exactly telling you what the individual steps are that they want you to complete. And for sure, again, as discussed in myth number 1, they will not tell you what the results of your work are supposed to be. So in general, I disagree with this myth, and this was even something that was also top of mind of many partners I used to work with, that they always used to say, so what we don't want to do is just to be the extended workbench of the client, so just to get some work done, get tasks done that at the moment the client cannot complete. It should always be a part of your independent opinion, your perspective that you bring to the table. Though that being said, I think there are two perspectives on this where maybe you could come to the conclusion that yes, there might be some truth to that. And the first is that the things that I talked about are very much true for MBB consulting, but might be less true for other consulting firms, maybe especially smaller or boutique consulting firms. So while I don't want to say that this is usually the case, there might be some consulting firms where your work often is indeed rather compared to temp work than to actually providing an independent opinion. And the second perspective of this is that sometimes, especially in projects that are already ongoing for a long time, projects that got extension after extension after extension, often you are really coming with the client into really a working mode, an operational mode, where you do tasks, agree on next steps, agree on to-dos. So these are the situations where then sometimes the lines get a little bit blurry. And here also the client just might like to work with you in this setting, because even though your fees probably are not really economical to just use you as a normal employee equivalent, for them maybe they just don't have the budget approval, not the means, not to hire new people, and it might just be easier for the client to continue working with you as a consultant, even though your fees are much higher than what they would pay to an employee, just out of the convenience aspect of it. So let's look at myth number 3. And this is that consultants actually don't care about their clients. They just want to make as much money as possible. They just want to collect their consulting fees, their per diems from the clients. And whether what they do then is creating any actual value at all, they don't even care about that as long as they get paid. And I find this way of talking about this quite bitter, to be honest. So surely consulting firms, as every other firm, is a business after all and will need to think economically, but that this just means that consultants don't care about their clients and customers, this just seems very wrong to me. And just to illustrate that, so at my former employer, one of the highest values, kind of the highest evolution level of being a consultant is really to become a trusted advisor to the clients, to the senior management, to the people that you work with. So whenever one of these people would have a problem, a business-related issue they wanted to discuss, ideally they would think about you, top of their mind, about a person that they can sit down with, just use you as a sparring partner, discuss some topics with you, and then potentially also then start a project to address certain issues. So surely deeply caring about your clients, deeply being concerned about what really creates value at your clients and has a positive impact, this, from my experience, from what I have seen, was always at the core of every successful partner I worked with. I not even once experienced a situation where a partner or any other senior person of the consulting firm would just barely imply anything like, oh, this project probably will not go well, but I don't care because I will make lots of money, so that's fine. Not even once in 6 years working in consulting have I heard anything like this. And again, it's of course difficult now to speak for every single consulting firm out there. Of course, my experiences are very much influenced by the firm that I worked for. But I would assume that at least for the MBB firms, McKinsey, BCG, Bain, this will be the trend. This is the situation that you will face. And this was also very well reflected in the culture and also the whole incentive systems, how you were also evaluated, even as a junior consultant. So you would always be rewarded if you were able really to come up with good ideas that really helped the client, if you came up with something that really resonated, had a positive impact, that really satisfied the client, made an impact. These were the things that would make you be perceived as a strong consultant, as a rock star. And frankly, if you set up your work in a way that you don't care about your client's success, but just about your own success, I think this will be very, very difficult, because often it's just the truth that these two are very closely interlinked. So the one regularly leads to the other and the other way around, which I think great, because this just means that the incentives are aligned. So what do you think about these big myths about consulting? Do you think they are true? What are your reflections on that? Would love to hear your perspective in the video comments to know whether you agree with what I've said or not. As always, if you took any value out of this video at all, please hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm and also subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all my content. I'm also active on other channels such as Instagram, TikTok or Twitch. You'll find the links to these channels in the video description. Of course, as always, also big thanks to all the members of Firm Learning. You're really making a great contribution to the cause. Thank you for that. My name is Heinrich from Firm Learning. It was a pleasure doing this video for you. See you again next week. Good weekend to all of you and bye bye.